Hello everyone. My point is, I want to just find out something. So all these things happening in Africa, is it that the world is not seeing it? Please just listen.
On Thursday, February 13, 2025, at approximately 4 a.m., the village of Maiba in the Democratic Republic of Congo was surrounded by gunmen from the ADF, an Islamic terror group with ties to ISIS. In two separate attacks that day, the terrorists came hunting for Christians in the village, abducting 70 people, men, women, children, and the elderly, and forcibly marching their terrified captives to another nearby village called Kasanga. They tied their hands behind their backs and led them to a church in the village, brought them into the sanctuary, and beheaded them. How can this be? Beyond the sheer horror of this brutality, the desecration of a church, the monstrous cruelty, what is truly shocking is that no one in the world seems to care. Where is the outcry? Where are the headlines? Where's the media, the governments, the religious leaders? Where are the Christian leaders crying out for their flock? The terrorists didn't just murder their Christian victims. They took them to a church to behead them there, to send a very clear symbolic message that this was an act of religious war, jihad. This is not an isolated incident. There is a continent-wide religious war being waged against Christians in Africa. Each year, thousands of Christians are murdered, raped, kidnapped, and beheaded for their faith, burned inside their churches across the continent. The extent of the threat is massive. Security researchers have described the continent as an emerging global epicenter of terrorism. The European Union Institute for Security Studies has estimated that more than half of all conflict violence targeting civilians in Africa arises from Salafi jihadist terror groups. A report by the American Enterprise Institute finds Salafi jihadi groups linked to Al-Qaeda and the Islamic State are spreading and strengthening in Africa, and that these groups will grow more lethal over time as they develop military and non-military capabilities and gain access to resources and opportunities that will drive an increased transnational terror threat as they mature. According to the development organization Aid to the Church in Need, across Africa, from sub-Saharan Africa to East Africa, there are at least a couple dozen terrorist organizations that have as their ambition to install caliphates in their territories. According to the Hudson Institute, the common denominator to the attacks against Christians in Africa is radical Islamist ideology, which infects individual Muslims, local mosques and villages, and coalesces into terrorist organizations. And menacingly, small organizations eventually find their way into global Islamist networks. The scale of the threat can already be measured. The Global Terrorism Index gives a composite measure of terror activity in a country, weighted over 5 years and made up of incidents, fatalities, injuries, and property damage. It ranks countries ranging from Mali to Nigeria, Niger, Chad, the DRC, Kenya, and Mozambique as greater terrorism threats than the traditional staples of Yemen, Iraq, Iran, Egypt, and Pakistan. According to the Global Terrorism Index, in recent years, the majority of all terrorism deaths globally occurs in sub-Saharan Africa. What this means is that African Christians are experiencing the brutality of an October 7 all the time, and no one seems to care. I have not heard any global or African Christian leaders taking up this cause. Where is the South African Council of Churches, the World Council of Churches? Where are you? Don't you care? The South African government doesn't seem to care. The African Union doesn't care. The United Nations doesn't care. Just last week, I received an international delegation of senior religious leaders driving the agenda of faith communities for this year's G20 meeting in South Africa. I told the delegation that this issue of the jihadi war waged by Islamic terror groups across Africa must be top of the G20 agenda, especially since it is being hosted in Africa. They were uncomfortable with this, preferring to highlight what they called issues of social cohesion or religiously inspired violence. I said to them that unless we can call this threat by its name, a continent-wide jihad, Christians will continue to be persecuted and butchered. This denial and moral obfuscation must end. I'm a rabbi. Why am I the only one who is raising the plight of Christians in Africa? But I cannot watch the carnage and stand by and do nothing. I cannot do this alone. That is why I'm turning to you, to everyone who is listening to this. Now, go speak to your pastors, priests, and church leaders. This must be the subject of sermons this coming Sunday in every church across South Africa, across Africa, and across the world. Call, write, implore your leaders to act, to talk about this issue in church, to take it up with politicians. If you need more information, contact me and I will link you with experts and research in this field. If you're in the United States or the rest of the world, contact your senator, your congressman. If you're in South Africa, speak to members of parliament, write to the president. We must all act. We must raise our voices. We cannot sit by passively and allow this carnage to continue. The jihadi war against Christians in Africa must end by mobilizing support from church leaders and politicians across the world. We can stop it. In the book of Genesis, when God confronted Cain about the murder of Abel, Cain responded, "Am I my brother's keeper?" And God said to him, "What have you done? The blood of your brother cries out to me from the ground." Right now, the blood of our brothers and sisters in Africa cries out from the ground. We cannot answer as Cain did. We cannot stand idly by. As the book of Leviticus commands, do not stand idly by the blood of your neighbor. We must act now to stop this brutality.
This video, let African Christians wake up. Thank you.